Okay, so this is also going to serve as a tutorial for how to do a deadlift and the variation that I'm recommending for this routine, which is the Romanian deadlift. Now, some people are more frequently used to the powerlifting deadlift, where you're basically trying to do either a 1 rep max or maybe like 90 to 80% of your total weight. So you can really only do maybe 3 reps, right, of the deadlift. In this case, I'm going to be focusing more on the Romanian deadlift, where you're really only using like maybe about 60% at the most of the amount of weight you could deadlift, but you're doing it to really more focus on developing your hamstrings and your traps and of course your back. Because I do a bodybuilding routine, a powerlifting routine, I don't really care the total amount of weight I can lift. What I'm focusing on is developing my muscles to reach momentary muscle failure, which is what you need to do in order to trigger hypertrophy of the muscles, to increase the size of the muscles. And while powerlifting is a great sport, when you lift the total amount you could lift, and you always do that, you greatly increase the risk of injury to yourself. Of course, you get injured, then you're out for several weeks, or maybe months, or maybe the rest of your life. And I'm not really interested in competing in powerlifting. I'm just trying to build my physique up, which is more of a bodybuilding thing, even if I'm not interested in sport, the competition level of bodybuilding. Hope that explains things. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to demonstrate how to do a deadlift and how to do a Romanian deadlift. You could do your pick of either. I recommend Romanian deadlifts because it's safer, but whatever you want to do. So deadlift is a leg exercise. A lot of people get it wrong. They think it's a back exercise, and it does work your back, it does work your traps by virtue of the fact you're holding up the weight. And it actually is a leg exercise, okay? It's a hamstring exercise. I read online that people say it's a quad exercise. It's not really a quad exercise. It's a hamstring, it's a flex and a hip exercise, really what it is. But it ends up developing your upper body, especially your core, because of the amount of you're having to maintain the weight using your upper body strength. And even if you're not doing like a pulling motion, okay, like a bent over row, you're going to end up working your traps just by virtue of the fact that they have to hold that weight up, okay? So that's where some people get confused. They think they need to be working their back when they're doing the deadlifts. That's actually a good way to injure yourself doing deadlifts, okay? So this is what we're actually going to do. You're going to place yourself so that your foot is literally about half, the bar is like basically over your toes, and half of your foot basically. So the bar should basically be cutting off half of your foot. And there's some people that like to get really close to it. They like to literally put the bar up onto their ankles. I don't think that's the best position. I think that actually places more stress on your lower back than is needed. I like to do it this way, okay? Maybe that's more of a powerlifting thing, I don't know. So then what you're gonna do is you're gonna actually bend all the way down as if you're in the lowest position of a squat, okay? Your back's gonna be flat. You can have your shoulders a little rounded. That's not a big deal. Some people think having the upper part of your back rounded is a problem. It's actually not, okay? What you wanna make sure is straight is your lower back. And if you need to wear, you're gonna lift a ton of weight, I would recommend having a weight belt to help you reinforce your diaphragm and make sure that you keep your back, your lower back supported. But in this case, I'm only using two plates here, so it's not a big deal. So we're gonna get down, we're gonna grab where it feels most comfortable, which is really shoulder width, which usually with the knurling is where the knurling begins on the bar. I'm gonna have my head up forward, looking straight ahead. In my case, I got some mirrors in the squat rack across from me, so I can actually look at my form and see that I'm doing things correctly. You're gonna make sure your butt is down, okay? You're basically in the lowest position of a squat. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna come up, and as you're coming up, you're gonna be doing two things. You're gonna be puffing your chest out, and by puffing your chest out, you're gonna bring your traps and your shoulders back out, okay? Some people focus on just bringing their traps back, but they don't do the chest puff. And you want a chest puff, okay? That's what you really want to do. And the other thing that you do is you are flexing your hips outward, okay? It's almost like you're doing a hip thrust sort of movement. And as you do that, you're putting most of the weight into your hamstrings. This is very important. It is a hamstring dominant exercise. If you feel like you're moving the weight too much on your shoulders, on your core, you're wrong. You come up like this, all right, and you're coming up like that, okay? It's just like that. So let me do that again. Come down low and hook up like this, and then put it back down, okay? That's the deadlift. And the deadlift is always that motion where you're bringing it up and you're putting it back down. If you got a lot of weight on it, I don't recommend descending with the weight. You should drop the bar and not onto the loading jacks I have here. You should take it off, okay? Very safely from the jacks first, just like this. Put the jacks away off of the deadlift platform, all right? You line up yourself. Just like that, okay? Don't worry about damaging the bar. This is a deadlift bar that I'm using from Rogue. It is designed so that it can take a lot of weight and bounce around and restore its shape. And I'm doing it on a deadlift platform, which means I don't have to use bumper plates to protect the floor. Plates are usually going to be fine doing it on a deadlift platform like this. So that's the standard. That is the standard. Another thing I should probably mention is you want to make sure you get the tension out, okay? The tension and the slack out of your body, so you have a strong posterior chain. And the way that you do that is when you're down here like this, okay? And you're about to lift up. What you're going to do is you're going to fill your lower diaphragm with air. And then you're going to lift. So I'm exaggerating my breath so you can see what I'm doing. Okay? And you're not going to release the oxygen in your lower diaphragm until you drop the weight. If you don't breathe that way, you're likely to injure yourself, okay? Especially if you use a lot of heavy weight. You want to have strong, all the tension out of your posterior chain. If you lift a lot of heavy weight and you've got no air in your diaphragm, you can very seriously injure yourself that way, okay? You have slack in your body. You don't have a strong foundation. This is where wearing a weight belt will help you reinforce that diaphragm when you're using a lot of weight, using 2 plates. So I could easily get away with having nothing in my chest, but that's not proper form. And you want to practice proper form so that when you graduate from using low weight, you're using proper form. It's going to keep you safe when you're using a lot of weight, okay? So now let's talk about the Romanian deadlift, okay? So Romanian deadlift is where you basically don't drop it, but it's not a back focused exercise. There's some people that do it almost like a bent over row. They got the weight up here like this, okay? And they try to go forward like this, and they try to pull it up like that. That's really a bent over row. Actually, that's almost like a bent over row mixed with a good morning, where your good morning is sort of the squat motion where you're going like that, which is a lower back exercise, but is a lower back exercise that should be practiced with very good form, ideally inside of a squat cage, probably, okay, just in case you start hurting your back with the safety arms there to help you, maybe even using a safety squat bar. Romanian deadlift is not a bent over row. It is not a lower back exercise, okay? What it is a way to work your hamstrings and your core and your traps, your shoulders, your back, okay, in a very controlled manner, doing almost half of the descent of a deadlift. So it looks like this, right? I do a basic deadlift, and I bring the weight up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend over slightly. I'm going to fill my diaphragm again so I can't talk. I'm going to bend over slightly, and then I'm going to immediately bring it back up. Now the important thing to notice is that as I'm bending over, I'm keeping this back straight again. My shoulders can roll forward. That's fine because, again, with the deadlift, you're trying to puff out your chest anyway. So that's going to happen. So, but you're only going down a little bit. You can go past your knees if you want. It's a little bit hard to talk and demonstrate at the same time, even with a small amount of weight on it. But you get the general idea, right? So I'm going to do a full set here, aiming for 6 to 12 reps of deadlift, Romanian deadlift, which is what you should be doing for this section of the routine, my recommendation. Otherwise, do a lot of weight, go for 1 to 3 reps, but I'm going to do Romanian deadlift, which is safer, for 6 to 12 reps. Eight reps is probably good, as I'm doing it a little bit slower than I probably would if I wasn't making this tutorial. So that's Romanian deadlift. And you do notice as I'm coming down, I'm releasing the oxygen as I'm descending, and then I'm starting it again. Hold my diaphragm as I pull back up. That is something that you can also do. Just want to make sure that you have, as long as you're past this point, you can let go of it. When you're coming up, you have to have your lower diaphragm full of air, or you can hurt yourself. Hope this is helpful. To be perfectly honest, if your goal is just to have general health, you don't really care about developing certain parts of your figure, if you just did nothing but deadlifts, you'd look pretty good. Not gonna lie, if you just do one exercise, if there is only one exercise you have time to do during your week, do a deadlift twice a week, and you'll look pretty good. Deadlift is the best exercise, period, to do because it works the most amount of parts of your body. It works a lot of different groups. Works your hamstrings, works your back, works your shoulders, traps, works a little bit of it works your core actually quite a bit, I should say. If you're just getting into deadlifting, I guarantee you, first time you deadlift correctly, with good form, your abs are going to hurt the next day. Your traps are going to hurt the next day. Hamstrings maybe not as much hurting, but these parts will definitely hurt. And the reason is very simple. Most people don't use their traps and their core for a hell of a lot, and their back to some extent. Most people sit on their butts all fucking day, and if they use their legs, it's just to walk around a grocery store or their house, right? So because you are using your legs a lot more than you're using the other parts of your upper body, you're going to feel it a lot more up here, which is why deadlifts are often considered to be a upper body exercise, even though it's really a hamstring dominant exercise. It's really hard to fully exhaust your hamstrings doing just a deadlift. It really is. It's really tough. But it's really easy to exhaust all this by doing a deadlift. So that's why it tends to be considered a upper body exercise, even though it really is dominant in your leg. I hope that helps you out a little bit. All physique programs, whether you're planning to be a competitive bodybuilder or not, you want to look jacked, do a fucking deadlift. Like I guarantee you, if you do nothing but deadlifts, you're gonna look really good, okay? But if you really want to look swole, do the whole thing, right? Build your program around bench press, build it around squat, build it around deadlift. You should be doing all 3 of these exercises to fully develop yourself. And I know I'm talking a little bit length here. It's going to be in the dedicated why you should deadlift and how to deadlift video, not part of the overall program here for back day, the back day program. Some people say that deadlifts are useless. Like there's no practical reason why you should ever deadlift. Well, that's actually kind of dumb, because whenever you're picking up something from the ground, that's literally what deadlift is. Deadlift is literally picking up something from the ground, which is something that many people do, but some people don't do often enough. It's a primary movement for the human body. It's one of the things that we are designed to do. We are one of the few creatures on this planet that can pick objects up like this, okay? We're supposed to pick up objects like this. That's what our bodies are for. You should deadlift, period.